Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. Welcome back to the program. And of course, inshallah, right now it is time for hashtag Palestine Radio. During this segment, we speak to activists from around the world and here in South Africa. And activism is not simply limited to the Palestinian struggle or the struggle of the Palestinian people. Activism also encompasses social justice activism and many other types of activism. Now, today, as we know, is a Women's Month, and I want to tell you a little bit more about my guest. The world as we know it today is filled with an ever increasing series of threats, from injustices in Palestine to raging wildfires, devastating floods, and a number of environmental crises across the globe. Now, systemic racism, police brutality affect people all over the world, not just in America. Times are extremely tough. Now, Generation Z and the younger millennials have made everyone take these matters seriously. And how? They've been doing that through highlighting their voices. And of course, female activists are also advocating, fighting, and taking on powers that be to stand up for what we should believe in. All of us should believe in. Now, I'm very pleased to be in conversation this evening with Sera Farista. She's only 18 years old and she's an intersectional climate justice activist. And she joins me now. Sarah, good evening to you and welcome to Salam Media.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me.
You are absolutely welcome. Thank you so much for your time. Sarah, I gave quite a fancy introduction there. And literally just to, make sure that you are comfortable in our discussion. Now, you just at the tender age of 18. I remember when I was 18, I was probably studying for my final year exams in high school. And in high school. And but you worried about things that are just a lot bigger than just examinations and getting through school. Could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Of course, thank you for the lovely introduction. And don't get me wrong, I am definitely also worried about my final examinations. I do start my physics prelim. I do write my physics prelim tomorrow.
Mm.
Um,
Ooh, sorry, Sarah. Before you continue,
sure.
could you lift up your camera a little bit because the name strap is blocking your face? There we go. There
Is
we
that
go.
better?
Much better. Much better.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yes. Okay. Go ahead.
As you said, I'm an intersectional environmental justice activist. I work
Hmm.
with various organizations such as the Climate Justice Charter Youth Wing, Fridays for Future Gauteng, and XR, as well as the Cancel Coal Task Force team. And I've recently started an eco club within my school community, and I'm the creator of the Climate Warriors in South Africa. Um, as you said, I advocate for intersectional justice
Hmm.
by advocating for social justice through climate justice. And I ensure that intersectionality is the lens in which I focus my activism through. So, incorporating anti racism, anti misogynistic comments, anti homophobia, all of that into my activism. And my recent projects have been centered around climate literacy and incorporating climate justice into the school's curriculum.
Mm. Now, Sarah, young people all over the world have been inspired by Greta Thunberg, the young activist, the climate change activist, and she's been speaking at the United Nations, she's been speaking at the World Economic Forum, and most major, world gatherings. But more than that, she's been a very, loud voice for climate activism, and she started when she was still very young. I mean, she's not 15 anymore, but she's really very, very prominent. So tell me, what or who inspired you to become a climate change activist?
Um, so I became inspired to get into climate activism when I was given a research assignment in grade 8, my first year of high school, and we could research any social justice issue.
Hmm.
And I came across climate change and the pollution levels in South Africa and how the increase of mining coal has been affecting not just the environment but people, human beings, and lives are being sacrificed and taken because of this issue. And as I was reading more and more and learning more and researching more, I grew a lot of climate anxiety. And I think this anxiety is what pushed me into activism because knowing about the problem and doing nothing about it was furthering the anxiety. It wasn't making it better. And speaking to peers around me who some are aware of the problem but believe that their own individual action will make a difference, or speaking to others who just don't believe in it also is what inspired me. And I think my activism really grew in 2019 after seeing activists like Kreta, Vanessa Nakati, Disha Ravi. I think it's very important to include activists from all backgrounds and all races and all genders so that everyone is feeling included within this space of climate justice. Media does tend to whitewash um, climate activism specifically, and I think it's important that we have fair representation as well as accurate representation in climate media. Um, but what's been most inspiring is seeing youth come up to me, or youth standing up, people who believe they didn't have the ability to make a change, say, "Thank you for teaching me this. I feel inspired. I spoke to friends and we're starting this new project." It's that mobilization and people becoming involved is what inspires me the most, and the community that's being created in this activism space.
Right. No. If we talk a little bit about people like Vanessa Nakati, right? I know we want to get a little bit into the activism, but many people, she came. She was known as a climate activist, but then when she went to Davos, remember that time when she was standing with Greta and others, and they cropped her out of the picture, and everybody else was like, okay, is it because she's from Africa? And the reason why I'm asking this is because you did talk about, the fact that the representation matters, even in the activism space. Do you want to tell me about how you interacted with that piece of news as a young South African woman that saw this poor woman from Uganda just cropped out of the picture?
It was definitely a response of disappointed but not surprised. I mean, we're very used to not just media, but history as well, excluding women, specifically women of color, in history books, in photographs, all across. But it stung, it hurt, because, like I said, they trying to control this narrative that it's just the West that's focusing on this problem, and
Mm,
it's also sort of giving like a white savior complex, if you understand. But it stung, and it definitely affect how South African activists feel, specifically Black women. I obviously can't speak for them, but it can't be nice to not see yourself being represented by someone as significant and inspirational and powerful as Vanessa Nakate. And I've interacted with her in the activism space, and she truly is one of the most influential activists who I am constantly inspired by. Um, so that definitely incited some irritation and anger, and also makes me want to shift my energy towards media inclusion and representation. Representation is so important, especially we living in an age where everything's on technology. We surrounded by social media, from TV shows to social media, newspaper articles. Representation is needed in every space.
absolutely. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the world stage. We spoke about Vanessa Nakate and Greta Thunberg at the World Economic Forum in Davos. I mentioned the fact that sometimes we see Greta on the world stage, scolding world leaders and telling them that, look, you're not taking this seriously enough. And she's young and she's a woman. Do you think Generation Z and the younger millennials have a greater sense of urgency? Because quite frankly, you guys are talking about the future Earth that you're going to inherit, isn't it? And the older guys, the fossil fuels, they're going to be out very soon, or in the next 20 years, and they couldn't care less. Do you see that kind of dynamic, Sarah, in terms of younger people having the sense of urgency and older people not that concerned?
Definitely. Like you said, this is the earth that we are going to inhabit. This is our future that we are talking about, and this is our future that older generations are diminishing slowly with every new coal deal they sign, with every new law they decide not that allows illegal corporate polluters to continue polluting the earth. Um, So I do definitely think there's a sense of urgency, and it's mainly coming from the side of the youth, and rightfully so. I think youth of South Africa and the youth of the world today have every right to be angry, to be frustrated, and to be passionate. And for us to be constantly belittled or not listened to because of our age and simply not knowing enough because we're not old enough, is an incredibly disheartening narrative that is forced onto us. And I mean, we've seen this been happening in history before. My history teacher, who, if she's listening to now, she's been a great inspiration towards me. And whenever she teaches us a section in history, she always refers back to the youth and how the youth started these movements, and how often political parties choose to take control of that narrative. We see it in the civil rights movement with Claudette Colvin, um, with the bus boycotts, which Rosa Parks did a few years later. We see it in South Africa when we're learning about Youth Day and Dietzi, the leader of the Youth Day march, and how various political parties tried to take credit for his actions and what the youth did. So it's a lot of playing between wanting to be with us and wanting to be against us, or wanting to take ownership of what we've started and what we're doing. Um, so it's an interesting dynamic, but I'm very proud of the youth of today, and I think if our urgency can be carried into the hearts of our politicians and those who have the power to actually institutionalize change, then this whole process of moving towards a just transition and a cleaner future and a more just future, not just environmentally but socially, um, we can achieve that.
Right. Sarah, I want to turn your attention towards the politicians that you spoke about and policy. South Africa right now is going through a very interesting time. We don't have enough power, as we can see with the rolling blackouts. We don't have enough energy in our grid, and government is now trying to look for very quick ways to supplement our energy. You may have heard of the Kapower ships, that massive ship that's going to be sailing off the east coast of or Eastern Cape, the coast of the Gold Coast, and generating power. And there's an issue there about the tender, about the environmental impact assessment that was not done. It's still in the courts, but nevertheless, it's a very noisy, very a fossil fuel way of dealing with South Africa's energy problems, right? And then there's the talk about the just transition from fossil fuels such as coal toward cleaner fuels. And we have our minister, Gwede Mantashe, minerals, the mining and minerals minister. I see you rolling your eyes saying, no, South Africa is not ready to give up on coal. Coal has served us well. We are a development state, and therefore we still need to electrify the country more. So he's taking it easy on the whole. Let's all move to renewables and let's leave the coal out because coal has served us well. But it's not just South Africa; it's the United Kingdom, it's Europe. Now that the war in Russia is happening, so there's going to be a gas shortfall for the European winter. So I know it's a very convoluted question that I'm asking you, but have you thought about those things? Because those are massive, massive policy discussions. Should we go green? Should we stick to fossil fuels? If we go green, does this mean that we will not be able to make up the shortfall? Because there is a shortfall. It's just simply not enough power, in South Africa today.
Um, it's something I've definitely thought about. I think when looking at South Africa, our main problem is this energy crisis. I mean, load shedding is a pain. I was scared I wasn't able to make this interview because of load shedding today. Um, and it's very clear that there's a problem and this problem needs to be fixed. It's actually quite dystopian what fossil fuels have done and have been doing. Um, and I'm going to bring up the Climate Justice Charter here because this is where I learned about the term just transition. And a just transition in that those miners who are working on coal mines aren't left unemployed when we move from our just transition from fossil fuel to renewable energy. I think South Africa has a great climate for solar power to work, in Cape Town, wind power to work, and in other places, water power to work. There's so many other alternatives that are renewable that we can't possibly have a shortage of, such as solar and wind, um, that all it takes is just that decision to make the move to start the just transition. And it's called the just transition for a reason. It's not something that's meant to happen overnight. But if we can start now, if we're looking at the next 5, 10 years, it's going to pay off. And um, I'm going to bring up the mining problem now with fossil fuels. It's the 16th of August today. On this day, 10 years ago, we had the Americana massacre where close to 32 miners lost their lives for simply protesting and asking for a living wage. And those responsible for the deaths and the fatalities that was caused on those days are mass capitalists and billionaires who have net worths of close to 8 billion rand. And those politicians are still running these policies. They refuse to even consider a just transition because they are winning in the situation of creating more and more profit. And it's that greed and that capitalist mindset that is holding us back. And it's that which needs to change. And it's 10 years later, and not a lot has changed at all. No one has been held accountable. And so many people aren't even aware of this problem and how it's been happening.
Mm. Sarah, I know you know you feel very strongly about these issues, and I think I must commend you that I think our future is safe with people like yourselves that are fighting for what is just and what is right. And I feel very happy that we are actually going to be in good hands. Here's my final question to you, Sarah. What does the future look like to you? Will we all be driving around in Elon Musk's cars or the EV, the electronic vehicles? Lots of people saying, it sounds really good and everything, but an electric vehicle won't work in Africa. Africa just, we're struggling to keep the lights on. How are we going to have like all these electrical cars? But I'm just interested to know from, just, to get to pick your brain. What does the future look like for you, climate wise, emission wise, lifestyle wise?
Well, an ideal future for me, even if we're not looking at it environmentally, is a future in which women can walk outside their house without the fear of being raped, being murdered, being attacked. So, firstly, starting with the basic right to safety and comfort for everyone, especially women. And then looking at it environmentally, it's a world where we don't have load shedding, where everything is renewably powered, where we focus more on improving the public transport sector in South Africa. I mean, imagine if we had more how trains around South Africa, how much convenient, how much better that could be for the environment. I definitely don't see electrical cars being the solution. A lot of I think a mistake that's often made is trying to take solutions or so-called solutions from the West and trying to force it into different places and different regions, and that won't work for multiple reasons. We have different economies, we have different histories, we have different climates. Geographically, it's just not the same, and it can't make sense that way. So I don't see a lot of electrical cars in the future, but um, and I won't get into my whole long tangent about Elon Musk and how how much I absolutely despise billionaires because it's just completely unethical. But I think a lot of work needs to be done, attacking things from an intersectional approach and from an approach in which social justice and climate justice overlap. You can't look at the two separately in any way, shape, or form. And by pushing for climate justice, you should be pushing for social justice, and essentially you are. So, an ideal future to me, and a future which we can hopefully achieve if politicians pull up their Gucci socks and turn their profit into something that is useful for everyone, and move away from that narrative of greed and corruption and selfishness. Um, we can have a future in which it is clean, it is free, it is joyful and happy. And I may be sounding a bit um, unrealistic here, but I do believe it can be possible. And a future which is focused more on community based action and not glorifying activists. A future where men are held accountable for their actions. A future in which we don't have influencers like Jeff Bezos and Andrew Tate running around spewing misogynistic comments. A future where women are safe and women are heard, and where the youth are unifying with older generations to protect our future.
Fantastic. Farishta, Sarah, as I said, the future of our future seems to be in good hands. And thank you so much for your activism. We would encourage you to continue doing what you're doing until it becomes second nature. And for everybody else. And this is a good influence on the young children. Youngsters are mostly worried about themselves, about their shoes, about their clothing. But it's so refreshing to hear somebody that's as young as you are, but worries so much about things that are so important to our future survival as a human race. But thank you so much for your time. And
Thank you very much.
let me allow you to get back to the books.
Unfortunately. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Same to you. Thanks. Sera Farista, the 18-year-old activist, talking to us there about the things that keep her up at night. And it's not just books and study. It's, the planet and the future sustainability of life as we know it. And I think, as I said, I feel very, very confident that the future is in good hands if we have young people such as Sarah and others like her. We spoke about Vanessa Nakati, we spoke about Greta Thunberg, and there's a number of others as well that are doing or making the pots happen and doing the things so that people understand and realize that, look, there is no planet B. This is the only planet we have. All right. I really thoroughly enjoyed that interview. Okay, so we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we turn our attention to the Kenya general election. Results are out. A winner has been declared, but it's not that simple. Find out why.